Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel for TruTechnoGamer. I know it's been a while since my last update. I apologize, but the last month has been really crazy for me. Life, that's gonna happen sometimes, but I am still here. Didn't forget about you guys. I have a queue of content that I'm planning to unroll, so expect to see a bulk of updates coming up, but please help me out. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you hit the bell to get alerts on your phone when I do a video update. And please make sure that you comment on the YouTube page, on the channel. My current videos are pretty bare with the comments. So even just to say hi, or just to say I liked it, I didn't like it, whatever it is, just shoot me a line. Let me know that you're listening. It'll help me out. It'll help the channel grow as well. So I appreciate all you guys, but I am back. So for this first video, I want to talk about PlayStation Now, which is Sony's cloud gaming streaming service, which has actually been around since 2014, believe it or not. Now, most people don't know that. So what did they announce just yesterday? They announced several details that now makes the service a lot more competitive to Google Stadia and Microsoft's Project X Cloud, both of which are coming out in about a month from now, or at least in some fashion as a beta or a test phase or something. So what did they announce? How does it affect the competitive landscape? How does it show that Sony is serious about cloud gaming? And what is PlayStation Now really all about? For all of that and more after the break. So PlayStation Now, Sony is really kicking it into gear, as evidenced by their announcements just yesterday. So what did they announce? Well, they announced some serious price drops, which now puts the price in line with what Project X Cloud and Google Stadia will be. They also announced that they are releasing some marquee content. Some of their best AAA games like God of War, PS4, Uncharted 4, PS4, Infamous Second Son, PS4, and for good measure, Grand Theft Auto 5 for PS4. And those titles will be available until January, when they'll shift them out and introduce some other marquee titles. So some serious content there. Now, this isn't going to be a review of the service. Right now, I don't actually have an active subscription to PlayStation Now. I have tried it before. I'll talk about that. But this is just more about talking about the announcements and the service overall and how it kind of looks in a competitive landscape. So I know a lot of people out there don't know about the service. They aren't really aware of the service, and that's Sony's fault, and I'll talk about that. But this will be more about how the service looks overall and how it compares to some of its competitors. So before we really get into it, let's do a bit of a refresher on what PlayStation Now is all about. So PlayStation Now is really the service that is the fruit of Sony's purchase of a company called Gaikai. Now, Gaikai was one of the early pioneers for cloud gaming back in the early 2010s, along with OnLive, if folks remember that. So Gaikai was a pretty small company. They had a competitor for OnLive. It was fairly serviceable at the time. It worked pretty well, but it still wasn't ready for prime time. And Sony bought them out in 2012, right before the PS4 came out. So in January of 2014 at CES, Sony announces PlayStation Now. And at the time, it really was just early test beta kind of thing. That only had a couple of PS3 games, not a couple, but a couple dozen PS3 games. Since then, they've done a lot of changes. So at one point, the service actually was only PS3 games. They later expanded it to support PS4 as well as PS2 games. No PS1 games yet. So they're getting to the point where, they're basically able to catalog the whole entire history of PlayStation. But not yet. They also added the ability to download games and not just stream them from the cloud. Now, that's a significant feature, and I'll talk more about that later. And then they just continually added more and more games, where to the point now They have roughly 800 games available for the service across PS2, PS3, and PS4. So they're definitely making, they're definitely getting things established and making some serious progress. They also changed the devices that you were able to use the service. So initially, they had a very wide scoping plan where you can access the service on your PlayStation 3, your PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation TV, as well as your PC, of course, and select Samsung HD TVs at the time, and pretty much all Sony HD TVs. So you can actually stream games directly from your television as well. They noticed what's missing. They didn't include mobile. So there never was a mobile phone variant of this as of yet. And that hasn't changed. There still isn't a PlayStation Now that you can get from your mobile phone. The other good thing about it is that it only requires 5 megabits per second of bandwidth. So it's a very lightweight. Most people can accommodate that. But there's a reason for that. The quality is pretty bad. So I'll mention that in a second too. But yeah, it's definitely needs some improvement there. So it's been out there for 5 years. So what has been the problems with it? Why isn't it something that is more widespread? Why did they need to make these announcements to make it more competitive, right, to Google Stadia and Microsoft xCloud? Well, there's several huge problems. First, the general streaming issues, and which I talked a lot about in my Google Stadia video, which I'll have a link to. But yeah, the issues with latency that just affects general gameplay, as well as like the video streaming. You get some video artifacts. Basically, the video quality doesn't look as good as it probably would on your local system directly on your HD TV. But other than that, specifically for PlayStation Now, price. Are you kidding me? So this thing launches, right, in 2014. Again, it was an early beta. It had a full launch in 2015. And at the time, it was just like 100 PlayStation 3 games. And most of those PlayStation 3 games were like little known games, like really low profile games, not necessarily like the biggest marquee games on PlayStation 3. And this thing launched, here was the pricing tier. 1 month for $19.99, 3 months for $49.99, and then 12 months for $100, $99.99. Are you serious? You're talking about in 2015 when game streaming is not really a big deal. No one really knows about it. No one really cares about it. You're basically allowing people to stream about 100 PlayStation 3 games, which at this point is last gen stuff, right? PlayStation 4 is out now, been out for over a year. Xbox One is out, so why is somebody going to go and spend $100, $20 a month? $20 a month? That's $240 a year. Who does that? All right. Now compare that to something like Netflix, which pricing has constantly changed. But you're talking like in Hulu and most of the stream things. You want to be at around $10, right? $10 a month. It's kind of typical. So this was ridiculous, and quite frankly, most people didn't care. Now, I personally did try the service when it first came out because they had like a trial, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it was. And yeah, from a quality standpoint, it worked. I played Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus, I think it was. Big Ratchet and Clank fan, and Into the Nexus was one of those games that came out on the PS3 really late into the PS3 cycle, so I didn't try it because I'd already moved on to PS4 and don't have that kind of time to be gaming like that. And I was like, oh, cool, I can go back and play this. And I did, and it worked. I played through the entire game. It wasn't too long, like 6 to 8 hours, somewhere around there. And yeah, it was perfectly serviceable. Now, there was a little bit of latency, but it was nothing that I couldn't adjust to after like 15 minutes of playing. And so, it worked, right? And that was a cool thing to see that it worked. But yeah, I did not subscribe because, yeah, the pricing structure was ridiculous. The second problem with it, as I just alluded to, was content. Only 100 PlayStation 3 games. It would have been really cool at the time to have PlayStation 4 games available, even if it was just like the launch games, like year before. But they didn't at the time. So no PlayStation 4 games, no PlayStation 2 games. When Sony first unveiled or announced the PlayStation 4, and they had the head of Gaikai go on stage, and they talked about how their vision was that you can play pretty much the entire history of PlayStation anywhere, anytime. That was like the full vision. And as cool as that sounds, we're still not there, and definitely wasn't there in 2015. So, content was an issue. The other issue with PlayStation Now was quality. I kind of alluded to this. Dude, you're streaming 720p streams. I mean, this is 2015. The world had pretty much moved on to 1080p, full HD. So you're streaming subpar quality, only stereo sound, no surround sound, no nothing. So all of that's to say, it was a clear drop in quality from what you can get on your local system. Even if you were playing on a local PS3 at the time, it was a lower level of quality that you can get from there. Definitely not compared to PlayStation 4, right? The crazy thing about that is that that's still what the service is today. Keep that in mind. So with all the new announcements of good new games and price drops and etc., they're still basically streaming 720p streams, even for PS4 games. Of course, if you had a PS4 and an HD TV, you're going to be getting 1080p and 5.1 surround sound from your PS4 games. But the streams are 720p with only stereo. Keep that in mind. Sony got to get the quality up. That just has to happen, especially if you want to compete in any way, shape, or form with Google. Keep in mind, for comparison, Google is promising 4K 60 frames per second HDR with Dolby 5.1 surround sound as part of their streaming service, right? So you're getting full state-of-the-art, in theory, full state-of-the-art capabilities with the Google Stadia streams. And of course, that requires like 25 megabits per second, which is like 5 times the the bandwidth for the PlayStation Now. But that's what you get for it, right? xCloud is not as ambitious because xCloud is focused more on the mobile side of things. So I think that they actually are streaming 720p streams as well. It might be 1080p. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might be 1080p, but yeah, not 4K 60. At least not initially. So other than quality, what is the other problem with PlayStation Now? Well, the marketing. I mentioned it. The service has been out now for 4 years in full, 5 years since it was first available. 5 years. No one knows about it. There are currently 100 million PlayStation 4 users out there, right? Sony has sold 100 million PlayStation 4s. But there are only 700,000 PlayStation Now subscribers. And those are not active subscribers. Those are like total subscribers in the entire 5 years. Now, you can do the quick math. That's less than 1%. Okay? No one is really aware of this thing, and no one really cares about it. And a lot of it has been due to price and due to limited content. The other issue has been limited availability in terms of what devices you can stream on. Now, here's the interesting thing. Like I mentioned earlier, at one point, Sony did have a very wide distribution, right? Where you could stream pretty much on everything except for a mobile phone, right? Including HD TVs from Samsung and Sony, and pretty much every device that had a PlayStation name in it, from PlayStation TV, Vita, PS3, PS4, etc. And PC, of course. But since then, they've reduced that and shrunk that quite a bit. So now, you only can stream on PS4 and PC. No other PlayStation platforms, and still no mobile phone. Now that enabled them to be able to focus their efforts a bit and kind of increase the quality a bit. And they've done that. Being able to download games and stuff like that is cool because you can't really do that on a TV because TVs don't have a hard drive, for example. But it still limits the scope, right? So if you have a PlayStation 4, well, you already have a PlayStation 4 and you're already playing PlayStation 4 games. So streaming it isn't necessarily, why would you want to stream a PlayStation 4 game when you can just play it? And now, unless, similar to Game Pass, the fact that it's immediately available to you, as part of this service, that's cool. But in general, it's not very compelling. And then for PC, yeah, I mean, it's cool that PC gamers can actually get into the PlayStation ecosystem because the PlayStation ecosystem, with all of those cool exclusives that, everyone talks about, God of War and Uncharted, The Last of Us now, and other games, Spider-Man, et cetera, it's cool that, it's always been so closed and you have to get a PlayStation to get those games. So now anybody with a PC and a laptop can play these games, and that's pretty cool. But you need to get on mobile. Google Stadia and Microsoft xCloud is the core of it is focused on mobile, right? Microsoft is really intending to extend the Xbox gaming experience. So you're playing on your console and PC, and then you have to go. You have to go on a trip. You have to go out, whatever. And it's like, yeah, you could take that game experience directly with you seamlessly. That's what xCloud is about. And most of that is on your phone. In fact, I think initially it really is limited to your phone and PC. Same thing with Google Stadia, right? All of the videos, yeah, it's available. It will be available on Chromecast Ultra for a TV if you want. But it really is, yeah, you can play this on your phone, your tablet seamlessly, right? And PC, of course. In order to be competitive, PlayStation now really has to get on mobile. So we'll see. I imagine that they probably will announce some kind of mobile release between now and next fall when the PS5 comes out. Just saying. But we'll see how that goes. And the other issue with PlayStation Now is that it didn't have any cross-buy, right? So you're streaming PS3 games. And in a lot of cases, there might have been games that you already had, right? When you had a PS3, you already had these games. So now you get the service and it's like, oh yeah, you can play these PS3 games. But if you already bought it, already owned it, already had progress in it, there was absolutely no link to that whatsoever. So you have to play the game again from scratch. You have to play it with no save file that you already had from your PS3 or your cloud save or whatever. It wasn't tied at all. And that is kind of, a bummer too. It's like, why am I going ahead and spending this crazy amount of money when I already have a lot of these games, right? And don't get any kind of benefit for owning them previously. So that was another issue with it. It leads to the result, which is that it hasn't had a huge uptake. Most people don't know about it. It doesn't have very much mind share. In fact, most people are giving more mind share to Google Stadia and Microsoft xCloud, mostly Stadia, in terms of being the pioneers in cloud gaming. And like cloud gaming is such a new thing. And Sony is like, well, yeah, we've been in it for 5 years. But it's their fault. They haven't really talked about it until now. So what has changed? Well, in terms of the price is now reduced by 50%. 50%. So remember I said it was $19.99 per month before. Now it's $9.99 per month. Yes, that is a lot more in line with what you would expect from a Netflix or Hulu, as well as Google Stadia and Project xCloud. Good job, Sony. As well as 3 months. It used to be 3 months for $49.99. Now it's 3 months for $24.99. So again, literally half the price. And then the kicker, for 12 months, it used to be $99 or $100. Now 12 months is $59.99, so $60. So not quite half, but almost half. Those prices in general are much more in line again with what we would expect, right? So way to go, Sony. So now the price at least is competitive with most things out there and is reasonable. The other thing that changed is that they addressed the content problem. So with this announcement, with this press release, they announced again these 4 really big, 4 of the biggest PlayStation 4 games in its entire history, right? God of War, Uncharted 4, Infamous Second Son, and GTA 5. All available on the service for instant streaming and downloading to your PlayStation 4. That's cool. That's powerful. Because one of the biggest issues before has been the content. The biggest games, right? The most unique, the highest rated games have not been available on the service. And now with that message and those 4 titles, they're saying, look, we heard you and we got it. You can expect to see other big games, I'm sure, coming down the pipe. Games like Drive Club, games like Spider-Man, probably games like Days Gone as well, stuff like that coming up soon, probably next year. They also, so again, now they have about 800 games in total with weekly updates. So every week they're adding more and more games. So the service is active, it's live, it is growing, so that's cool. The other thing that changed, again, is marketing. Again, they have done almost nothing to get the message out for the service. And just yesterday, they have this press release with these new, announcing the new pricing structure, these new content, but also they have a brand new TV ad. Now, that's pretty rare. But they have a full TV ad just for PlayStation Now that highlights those 4 games and just highlights the new pricing structure. I have a link to it in the description for this video, so check it out if you haven't seen it already on TV. But yeah, they're trying to get the word out more. There's also, of course, a bunch of internet ads. If you, browsing YouTube, browsing the web, you'll see it. You'll see that there's, PlayStation Now ads out there. So they're definitely trying to, get an uptick. And again, with all of the combination of all of these things, I would not be surprised to see that their subscription rate probably doubles, between now and the end of the fiscal year, which basically is between now and next March of 2020. At least doubles, right? So it'll be at 1.5 million or so, something like that, maybe even approaching 2 million. And then by the time next fall comes out, when the next generation systems, PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox and Google Stadia will kind of be really kicking into gear, I wouldn't be surprised if they're several million in. I mean, probably like at least about 3 to 4 million. Let's say 3 to 5 million, by next fall. And that's a pretty good number because, they already have a head start over Google and Microsoft, right? So that's all good. What hasn't changed? Again, still no mobile phone. They're going to need that to be competitive. They're going to need that. So I really think that they're going to announce something between now and next year. And then the quality hasn't changed. Like I mentioned earlier, guys, 720p streams, no surround sound, no HDR. Come on. You got to get with the program here. They're going to have to definitely increase that. So now, what does the competitive outlook look like? Well, with these changes, again, the pricing structure is roughly about the same. At least it's on par for what Google is saying and what Microsoft xCloud is saying. But also, when you look at the PlayStation Now service as a whole, what are the advantages? Well, it has a lower bandwidth requirement. Again, only 5 megabits per second. That's really low, and most everyone can accommodate that. Most everyone with an internet stream can accommodate that. They have the time advantage, right? The service has been out for 5 years. 5 years they've been working on it, iterating on it, improving it. So that's a leg up compared to what Microsoft and Google have. They have Sony's exclusive titles, the PlayStation titles that historically have only been available on PlayStation, but they are among the best games of the generation, the best games of the industry. And now that they're widening that so that more people, even with PlayStation 4s, that, just for pricing reasons, for, financial reasons, I can't afford to get these games, or, maybe they didn't want to pay for it. Now they have a way to just get the service and they can try all of these PlayStation games instantly, right, and get access to them. And then also, again, opening up the market for the PC players, all right, who have, just been closed out from the PlayStation market for so long. And yeah, those Sony exclusive titles that you won't get on xCloud, Microsoft, you won't get on Google, right? Again, The Last of Us, Uncharted, Infamous, and Ghost of Tsushima. Games like Death Stranding coming soon, right? Days Gone, Spider-Man. A ton of games, man. Just all of those great Gran Turismo. Those great Sony games that have been doing so well. Bloodborne. Stuff like that. So look out for those, man. If you haven't never owned a PlayStation and have a PC, look out, look to try it. And then, the ability to download games is significant. I'm pretty sure that we'll see something similar on Google Stadia. And basically what that does, it kind of makes it a hybrid, right? Where it's kind of like Microsoft Xbox Game Pass, as well as the cloud service, right? So playing it on the cloud means you get instant access. It means that you don't even really need your hardware, right? If you have PlayStation Now app on your PC, it literally says in the description that you don't need a GPU. You don't need a graphics card. The game isn't running on your PC. So you can play this. If you have a 5-year-old just laptop, you can play these games at reasonable quality, right? And that's awesome. That's what cloud gaming is all about. But you're going to have to deal with some latency. You're going to have to deal with some video artifacting and just subpar video quality in general. So the ability to download means that you get to bypass those issues with the streaming. But it also means that it basically is like Game Pass. You can download the full games and play it locally on your machine. So again, with the weekly updates, if Sony gets to the point like Game Pass does, where they're releasing games like day and date with their releases. So for example, The Last of Us Part 2 coming out in February 2020. I wouldn't be surprised, guys. I wouldn't be surprised, but they haven't said anything yet. But imagine if The Last of Us Part 2 is available day and date on PlayStation Now. Well, that's compelling, and that's what Game Pass is, right? Because now you got this brand new game, and you can stream it and get instant access to it without having to pay $60 for it. I think they're heading in that direction for sure. I think that the infrastructure is in place to support that. But again, you can stream it. Game Pass, you can only download, right? At least right now. But with PlayStation Now, you can stream it, Or you can say, yeah, I want to download it and play it locally on my PS4. That's cool. So that's a big advantage. And again, I think that Microsoft and Google will close that gap pretty soon there. So what are the disadvantages? Well, you're only limited to PlayStation titles. Okay, if there's anything on PC or Xbox that you really want to play, you're not gonna be able to play it. So this is PlayStation only, guys. Again, the streaming quality is subpar to say the least. They really need to increase that. Only certain PS4 games can be downloaded. So you can't download PS3 games. That kind of makes sense because you can't play PS3 games natively on your PC or your PlayStation 4. But even on a PlayStation 4, only some games can be downloaded. I'm guessing that most of the newer games will be able to be downloaded. And there's probably some older games or some smaller games that can't be downloaded for whatever reason. But just keep that in mind. It's not like a universal thing where you can just download everything on a service. And then, yeah, again, limited device support, right? They need the mobile. So, in summary, PlayStation Now is for real, guys. It's here to stay. Sony is obviously serious about it, and they really are preparing to battle it out with Google and Microsoft in terms of cloud gaming. Cloud gaming will be here, right? So you will be able to play games in the cloud instantly on some device across every platform starting this year, starting this fall. So it's come a long way, man. It's come a long way. They've changed the devices that supports it. They've added downloaded. They've added PS4 and PlayStation 2 support. But it has a long way to go, again, with the quality. Keep adding more content and get into more devices for sure. So how will the PS5 release affect this? Will PlayStation Now be just an app that's part of the PS5? Will PS5 games be added to the service? I'm pretty sure it will. Will PS5 games be released day and date on the service, a la Game Pass? That's an interesting question. We don't know the answer. But stay tuned. I will keep you up to date. I'm sure Sony will talk a lot more about this between now and next year. So if you haven't already, they have a free trial of PlayStation Now. Give it a go if you have a PlayStation 4. See where it's at. I know I will pretty soon here as well. Until the next video, thanks a lot, guys. I hope to see you in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And until the next video, talk to you soon. Thanks.